So Muhammad has asked the Buddha about the truth so that he doesn't get caught up in dualistic views. And this is the Buddha's reply. It's verse 681. To be delivered from the notion of cause and no cause, not to be born and being one, these are synonyms. The ignorant are bewildered by them, but the wise always rise above them. So what have we got here? To be delivered from the notion of cause and no cause. That's supposed to be synonymous with not being born and being one. I recently spoke about causation. It was something which I thought needed clearing up, because the teaching of the Buddha is very much grounded in causation. But as I pointed out in that video, this is to be applied to enlightenment practice, to spiritual practice only. As for the world, we remove causation from the world, because causation is a way of thinking about the world, and it's a way of reinforcing its apparent external reality. And this might seem quite confusing and quite difficult to assimilate. But if you think about the mountain in a dream, what are the causes which gave rise to it? Were the causes that gave rise to the mountain in a dream, were they geological? Or perhaps it was to do with something that you ate before you went to sleep. So is that the cause of the mountain? Or perhaps it's some kind of Freudian thing. It's to do with your sexuality. Is that the cause of the mountain? Or perhaps it represents something else. Depending on your dream symbols, perhaps it represents something that you've got to climb. You have an arduous journey of some sort, and the mountain is caused by that subconscious realization. So take your pick. Take your pick. What caused the mountain in the dream? Now you'll say, yeah, well that's okay, that's just the dream. But the mountain out there in the world was caused by geological forces. Well, hang on. How do we know there is a mountain there? You're stating that mountain is there as if it's got nothing to do with our perception of it. We only know that mountain is there because our senses tell us it is there. And how do the senses work? Well, the senses, according to the official story, are transducers. They take various types of energy and turn them into electricity. So for example, the light from the mountain that's reflected from the mountain, it's not even emitted by the mountain, the light that is reflected from the mountain goes into our eyes, triggers some electrochemical reaction at the back of the eyes and the retina, and sends a signal along the optic nerve. And I've gone into this quite a bit before, and how when you look into how the eye works, you'll see this amazingly elaborate diagram of all the different parts of the eye. And then at the bottom, which is the most significant part, there's a little tube which is the optic nerve an arrow pointing to the brain. So the whole thing about the eye has nothing to do with how we see. It's that electricity which goes to the brain, which just kind of gets ignored. That's what the mountain is, or at least the visual image of the mountain. We could go and touch it, and then the tactile sensations will be turned to electricity and sent along our nerves again to the brain. And according to the story, all these electrical signals are somehow decoded by the brain to give us the image of the mountain. So it's not the mountain that we're seeing, is it? If we're just talking about seeing, then all we're seeing is reflected light. And we're not even seeing reflected light. We're getting a reconstruction based on electrical signals. I'd love to know how the brain does this. How the brain turns electrical signals into subjective experience, the subjective experience of the mountain. So, what are we experiencing? Are we experiencing a mountain, or are we experiencing electrical signals? Or perhaps it's just the same as in the dream. The one thing in common between both the dream and the so-called waking state is that consciousness is at work. Consciousness in the dream creates the mountain with its history, with its whole history. Its whole history of geological forces. And that's exactly what it's doing in the waking state as well. It's creating the idea of a mountain with a huge history behind it. So as enlightenment practitioners, what we're concerned with is the working of consciousness. And we're not concerned with what consciousness is conscious of. We're concerned with consciousness itself. So we drop these stories. We drop the causal stories that we're told give rise to various objects in the external world. What we're interested in is that which is aware of everything. That which is conscious of everything. This is what we come back to. So, this is cause and no cause. What we've actually got here in this verse is another description of enlightenment practice. We move from cause to no cause. And then we cultivate that. We remain in that realization of no cause as long as possible. We do not allow notions to be born. We do not allow ourselves to get sucked in to such notions once again. Notions of an external world, notions of birth, notions of different entities, different things. Because we're abiding once again, or at least consciousness is abiding once again, in itself, in realization of its own nature. This is the meaning of emptiness. And of course this emptiness is very full, because everything arises within it. It's like appreciating the silence, which allows all sound to happen. And being one. Not to be born, and being one. Because this consciousness is one. It's not my consciousness or your consciousness, because we've gone beyond me and you. We've reached non-dual realization once again. And we keep coming back to it. Because the tendency is to go out, is to move into dualism. But as practitioners, we keep coming back. We keep coming back. We keep coming back to non-duality. So this language is confusing. But we don't need to worry about the language, we just need to practice. And it's in this practice that we return to sanity. We return to wisdom. We return to what was described a couple of verses ago as intelligence, and what I described as sanity, and what is here described as wisdom. So this is our practice, coming back to singular awareness.